to infinity and beyond.
This is me. This is how I win.
Were you rushing or were you dragging? Answer!
You're a wizard, Harry.
Say what again? Say what again? I dare you.
No, I am your father.
Hasta la vista, baby.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
And here we go.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back inside the film room. I'm Zach Goins, and I am here with the one and only Johnny Sobchak. Johnny, we're into November. Halloween is over. A lot's been going on. How are you? It's good to have you back on the podcast for another episode.
Yeah, where's the time going? It feels like
we're about to be whipping up year-end lists here in a second.
Yeah. I mean, I was going to mention this earlier in the chat, but I actually over the last few days, or like in the last week, I've compiled my NC FCA like noms that I would have to this point. So
right,
I won't have to completely start from scratch whenever we get around to doing that. But yeah, it's getting there. We're getting towards the end. 2 months to go. But eventful to be sure so far. I mean, last month I think is kind of the biggest for movies we've had in a long time. In many ways. We had the film festival, we had Dune, James Bond, and Last Night in Soho, which we're going to be talking about today, and of course Succession as well, which we'll be talking about. The season's kicked off, and we're now 3 episodes in, and that's just the movie and TV stuff, and then of course all the personal things that come along with Halloween and work and everything else.
I was just looking at my list here after you said that, and I saw, so Last Night in Soho was the 50th new movie, like 2021 release that I've seen this year, and of those 50, 11 of them came during October. So not only in like quality of movie, but in quantity as well. Like,
yeah, obviously
the film fest plays a big part in that, but still outside of that, like No Time to Die, Halloween Kills, Antlers, Dune, and then now Last Night in Soho. So we've been busy.
Good.
Good busy. And I was also busy with a little birthday celebration this weekend. You're podcasting with an old man, Johnny.
Good Lord. Well,
I'm
right
a quarter
around,
of the way to
corner.
100.
God, don't say that. Because my birthday is this month now. It's November. So I'm coming up on your heels.
Oh, it's weird now that I am in my mid 20s rather than being able to say like, oh, I'm in my early 20s.
Yeah,
it's smack dab in the middle.
Yeah, your energy and mindset, I feel, is quite different. At least, like, I don't know, at least for me, when you're 20, 21, you're like, wow, like my 20s, like this whole thing is ahead of me. And you wonder what it's going to be like and like what you can accomplish. And of course, I mean, to be fair, a lot's getting accomplished. But it's to actually get there is and be there is interesting.
It's weird being, I don't know, just like seeing celebrities and like athletes and stuff, and it's like, I am actually older than a lot of these people at this point.
Right.
It's weird, but yeah, it was a good birthday and Halloween weekend. What was the costume? I saw, so talk to people who don't follow you on IG. Talk them through what your costume was with Reagan this weekend.
Yes, I did post on Twitter as well, so you can find it there if you listen and follow me. But it was Neo. I went as Neo, and my girlfriend Reagan went as Trinity from The Matrix. And that was a lot of fun. We'd been thinking about this for a while, because she finally saw The Matrix for the first time in the last year. I showed it to her after I got the 4K, And of course, also the Matrix Resurrections is around the corner, comes out in December. And it just kind of all came together. She really loved the movie when we saw it, and she's looking forward to the new one. So and it's a fairly easy costume. It's just simple black clothes that you can just kind of piece together and get. I had to get a couple things for it, but it wasn't too crazy, and the sunglasses, of course. But yeah, it was a lot of fun. We went out Saturday night, so not Halloween night, but Saturday night with a lot of her classmates and cast mates and things like that, and had some fun and got some compliments and everything. So it was good.
Good. I was the most basic, I feel like this is how it worked out. So I was Ted Lasso along with like 8,000 other people in the world. And if anyone who like listens to the podcast or follows me or anything, they knew from like January that I was going to be Ted Lasso for Halloween. However, as friend of the podcast, Hunter Heilman, said, if anyone, like, he stands by his point. Basically, he said like, oh, if I see another heterosexual man dressed up as Ted Lasso, I'm going to kill myself. And I was like, oh, well, this is the day before I was dressing up. I was like, oh, this is awkward. And then he said, I stand by my point, but you're the one person who probably deserves it. So I like to think that after all the interviews and everything that we've gotten to do with them, that it was justified to be Ted Lasso for myself.
Yeah, I think very few people could say that they earned it or deserved it.
Everyone else purchased their clothing. I was sent it by Apple.
Ooh,
so
hey.
all I had to do was get a fake mustache, but I had like the visor and the scarf and like the jersey and everything. So it was all good to go. And then I will say I saw a ton on social media, but I did not see another Ted Lasso while I was out. So at least I felt special there.
Yeah, you didn't have the face-to-face confrontation.
I didn't have to just absolutely flex on anybody and ask them where they got their stuff. But Rebecca we didn't have a matching costume. She was Cruella. So she was rocking the black and white wig and a red dress. And it was very last minute for her. She got the wig, but then we turned a chopstick into her like long cigarette holder. And Remy was Dobby. So we put a pillowcase on him and gave him a sock.
That was hilarious. I showed Reagan the pictures, and yeah, we loved the Dobby.
It came out of a loving nickname because his ears will get stuck. They'll like flip back and be stuck like inside out sometimes, and it actually like looks like Dobby. So that's where we had like called him that previously, like not even like thinking about Halloween. And then we're like, well, we already dressed him up as Remy last year, so as his namesake. So let's mix it up this year. Yeah.
Since Reagan and I started dating, we've always we just go with the couples costumes because they're just easier. I feel. I don't know. I remember the first year we did and of course this is when I was in college as well, so we had more opportunities to dress up, like multiple parties, things like that. So I think we did like a couple vampires, and then the other time we did on Franklin Street. We went up there. We dressed up as she did Little Red Riding Hood, and I was the big bad wolf. And that was a lot of fun. And then last year we did Euphoria inspired
that one.
Costumes, and then of course, this year Neo and Trinity. I think as of right now, Batman and Catwoman is probably the leading contender for next year. I'm looking forward to that. So
that'll be a good one. I'm trying. We usually do couples costumes as well, but I just had to go Ted Lasso this year.
Oh yeah.
But we've done. I remember we did maybe junior year. We did Ariana Grande and Pete Davidson.
Yeah, that was a good one. Yeah,
that was when they like the iconic photo of them like walking out and her licking the lollipop. And we did. I'm trying to think. I've done. We did Burt Macklin and Janet Snakehole, the Aubrey Plaza and Chris Pratt characters from Parks and Rec at one point. I'm trying to think what else we've done. I was Stanley Yelnats from Holes one year in college. So usually some sort of TV, movie, pop culture reference. We were 11 and she was 11 and I was Dustin from Stranger Things one time. So we've had a good run of it.
Hey, you'll have to see it. You have to. I mean, it's like a moral obligation.
Exactly. Well, anything else? I will say I watched, getting back to the away from, still on Halloween, but away from costumes. I watched Scream last night to get a little spooky. It was the first time I'd seen it. Paramount had sent over the 4K for that, so I got to check it out, and it was a blast. I'd never seen, like, I didn't know what to expect necessarily because I didn't know much about it other than that it was like a slasher Halloween movie. But I loved the fact that it was so, like, it was a Halloween movie and a horror movie, but it wasn't at the same time. Because have you seen it?
I mean, I don't know if I've ever seen it fully beginning to end, but I'm very familiar with it.
Right. Well, like I didn't know that it was kind of like the way that it was so like meta and self-referential of like, oh, we're talking about like this is what happens in the horror movie. Like they talk about like Jason Voorhees and Michael Myers and Freddy Krueger all in the movies. And it's funny to see. It felt almost like a parody while still being like a real movie. So that was a good unexpected surprise to watch last night. But did you do any spooky viewing over the weekend?
Yeah, we were very much slacking compared to last year. I mean, last year we were on
last year you had like a lengthy watch list that you went through.
Yeah, and that was like a month of just straight up Halloween and spooky stuff. This year, of course, there's a lot of new releases, so mainly was checking those out, and then I was very busy with work, and she was very busy with work, so didn't really make as much time as we should have. Recently, like over the last weekend, we threw on The Conjuring 2 on Friday night after I got there, watched most of that. She liked the first one. I showed that to her last week, and she was a pretty big fan of it. And then we watched most of the second one, and she didn't like it like nearly as much, it seemed like. So they're fine.
I have not seen the first one, but I've seen the second and third one, and I like the second one better than the third one. So
yeah, they're fine. Like they definitely get
downhill.
weaker as they go on, and they're just not, they don't hold up necessarily. And then, of course, we put on Nightmare Before Christmas last night as we were carving a pumpkin and eating candy, and we also I showed her some The Simpsons Treehouse of Horror episodes on Disney Plus as well, because she's like very much like cartoon illiterate, I would say. Like growing up, she like wasn't allowed to like watch that many like cartoons. So that like, and I loved The Simpsons growing up, and Treehouse of Horror was like a big like staple of mine every Halloween. So that was fun to kind of revisit those things that I hadn't seen in years and like really loved. And she actually like liked them a lot and thought they were really funny. So that was cool.
Well, shall we get into the biggest thing that we both watched last night? Talk about a little Succession.
Let's do it.
All right, season 3, episode 3. We had another absolute banger, directed by Kathy Yan from Birds of Prey fame. Good little mix up there to have her come in. Biggest moments here. What were your biggest? I've got a couple listed here. Feel free to talk about any of those or anything that I'm missing. What were your takeaways from this episode, Johnny?
I mean, this was just a nuts episode. It was a lot of like very dramatic, very dark, not as funny as the first couple episodes, and really not as funny as I think most episodes of Succession. It was just, even the things that were kind of going for laughs or like the more humorous moments felt like almost too like awkward or upsetting to like really laugh at. Like it's like it was like very dark.
Just like Greg and the Watch was like a good laugh, but other than that, yeah.
Other than that, yeah, it was very much Kendall is it's like you don't really know what to make of him. Like he's just so up and down and erratic and delusional. And then on the other side you have the family, and they are, I mean, Roman was just kind of, I mean, he just seems like he doesn't know what the hell he's doing. Shiv feels like she's under immense pressure from her dad, even though she was kind of he was trying to sweeten her up with this president position, and now it's kind of like she's under like immense pressure because of that, being in this position. And she's, as Kendall claims and kind of says to her face, she's like the new him, and she's kind of like taking her spot and being forced into the
she's
spotlight,
being groomed, and
and taking the heat for a lot of stuff. And Kendall kind of exploits that, which I would say that moment potentially was the funniest moment, and was shocking, and like I don't even know if I laughed necessarily. I think I was just in awe and like jaw dropped when
you're talking about when the music starts playing during her speech, when she gets punked.
Yes. That was punked is a good way to describe it. It was a and the song choice in particular was it was not like he was just blasting. Like, it could have been any music or any song, and of course it still would have been distracting, but the choice of Nirvana song was apt, to say the least. And it really kind of goes from there into, the end of the show, like the last little stretch there, where after that happens, Shiv chooses to go out and publish this letter, kind of trying to undercut Kendall and his mental state, and really hit him below the belt when it comes to rehabilitation and addiction and all these other things that he's been struggling with throughout the series. And it's published publicly. She tries to get Connor and Roman to also sign on to it, and they're both like, oh, like they feel like it's gross. And it feels like finally Shiv is kind of going to the point of no return in a lot of ways. I feel like she's kind of becoming almost she hasn't necessarily done anything super solid yet that might say that she's like irredeemable, but it kind of feels like that.
Especially with the way she treats Tom.
Like Tom, she's now ready to send him off to prison if it means saving the company and saving her dad, and giving her the spotlight and power. So yeah, she is just off. Like I have definitely come down on like now on saying that she is the worst character of that isn't Logan. Logan's definitely like the king bastard, but Shiv is probably the most like him, I would say, in a lot of ways. And I think that's why Logan continues to rely on her and or exploit her and take advantage of her in the position that she is in now. And this all spirals down to Roman, the kind of this parallel and back and forth between Roman, or not Roman, but Kendall, trying to go on this talk show. And right before he goes on, that's when the letter from Shiv is published, and he sees it and just runs and hides in like one of the like rooms in the studio. And so he doesn't go on the show. And then as that's going on and he's having this breakdown, and then everyone on TV is kind of like making fun of him, at Waystar, at the headquarters in New York, the FBI shows up at the end, and it's like the enemy is flooding into the city. They're climbing over the walls, through the gates, and Logan is scared, shitless. Truly, I would say maybe for the first time, like he is like, there's nowhere for him to run or hide. So his family and his associates are also kind of feeling that and are kind of in shock. So it's a very shocking ending. And of course, the last bit we see is Kendall seeing that this is happening. And then he kind of goes from this very dark.
Give him the Emmy. Give him the Emmy already.
No. It's to the point where if anyone else asks me from this point forward, oh, Succession, like, why should I watch Succession? Do you recommend it? Like, I'm not going to say anything else now, except that if you're not watching this, you're missing out on watching one of the best TV performances of all time, like in live, like time, like real time. Because Jeremy Strong as Kendall is one of the, legitimately one of the best performances you'll ever see. And the fact that, especially on television, it plays out over multiple seasons and many episodes. His development and his subtleties and the way that he I mean, he just rips you all over the place as a viewer, from not just episode to episode, but scene to scene, like your emotions about
right.
him.
Like within this episode, like I feel he's like obviously positioned as like, I don't want to say like the good guy because he's not, but like he's like the protagonist of the story, being like it's always been like everyone's story, but still like he's been at the center of it throughout every season, and especially right now, like with this attack against Waystar. But he's just like, there's no better word than unhinged, because like it's so like you're rooting for him sort of, but then also like it's so cringy. Like this whole episode was so cringy to watch him as he's in the car like with this entourage, and he's like, okay, we're gonna play this game, which they have obviously, by the like enthusiasm, they've played it before, which is like good tweet, bad tweet. And so he's just like making them search his name on Twitter and like read a tweet about him. And then like the same thing, like when there's a new snippet on the comedy show about me, I'm gonna like turn like shut the music off at the party, turn the TV on, and make everybody watch it. And like he's just like so self-absorbed in what's going on, and like projecting that onto everybody else, and making them assuming that they are the same, like they're as obsessed with him and what's going on as he is. And it's just like making him, I don't know, not like, there are other things that make him like not necessarily redeemable, but like this in particular is like making it kind of hard to like continue to root for him, when it's like, dude, you used to be like cool, but now it's like getting weird. Like it's like a weird level of obsession with yourself and everything that's going on. But like in that final scene you were talking about, like the all the way down the hallway, like the tracking shot, and then going into the control room, which I at first thought he was like gonna start ripping cords out or something so that the show couldn't happen.
That's what I thought as well. Yeah.
But then it was like a much better, that would have been like a Logan thing to do, but this was a very Kindle thing to have him like have this breakdown, sit down, and like just kind of like be terrified, and then at the very end to have that like slight smile, the like curve in his lips change as he sees that news happening. It's again just absolutely brilliant by Jeremy Strong.
Yeah, it's crazy how it's like, it's not like he does the same exact thing either. Like it is very so subtly different, and the way he shifts, as you mentioned, just his lips and his eyes and his posture and everything, it's very, very impressive. And I can't decide. He's so complicated and complex, and I just really wonder. I tweeted this also with regards to wondering, kind of speculating based on this episode, but it's getting so dark and the characters feel so desperate and cornered and kind of hopeless, especially characters like Tom in particular, the way he was talking about going to prison.
I'm curious. I wanted to talk about Tom, but so let me, after you finish this thought, we're going to Tom.
Okay. So Tom, the way he's talking to Shiv about potentially going to prison, how that looks, how that would work with her family, with her, the way Roman is acting a lot lately, especially in this episode. Like he seems very dejected and kind of at odds with almost everyone. It's like not even him and Jerry are really getting along. Kendall is so up and down. I mean, like the way he looked walking down the hall and into that room. I really do wonder if all the characters are going to like live through to the end of the show, because like they're in such distress. I would not be surprised if like someone ends up like killing themselves or something like that. Or like it's so like it really does seem like it's going to get darker. And I wasn't really expecting that. Of course, the trailers didn't really play it up to that degree, but I feel this episode might be a hint, or a kind of like a foreboding sense of that kind of doom. And the way it ends in particular, I mean, it just feels so, I mean, who knows? And Logan also, they have talked about the entire series. He won't give up. He won't back down. but also he really doesn't want to go to prison, and it seems like he's hiding a lot of shit potentially. It seems like there's probably something going on that we still don't know about, and Shiv doesn't know about the way the conversation they have in private, where he is really kind of being coy and not being upfront about everything. I mean, that maybe there's a position where he ends up fucking killing himself rather than going to prison, and that's how they end up taking over the company. I mean, it could be anything. It's really, I don't know if you got that sense at all, if anyone else was feeling that, but
yeah, I mean, it's that I feel like it's not. I don't know, because like all of the characters are so like I couldn't imagine them like everyone's been so integral that I couldn't imagine that any of the actors would be like, yeah, I'm good not being in season 4. Like if that were to happen, but
not necessarily that they would die this season, but before the show ends.
Yeah, okay.
I feel like that's possible. If there's a next season, obviously next season or season, if it gets to season 5, I mean, there's a lot that could happen, I think.
So I wanted to talk about Tom. I feel like, was that genuine? Was that sincere? Or do we think Tom is wearing a wire? Because through the conversation with Shiv and the conversation with Logan, where he kind of got like plenty of juicy details there that could be useful. And like, so I saw this conversation on Twitter, and then people also saying that Shiv could be wearing a wire, like with a line of from last week's episode where they're in the kids' room and she's like, you all knew, but I didn't, trying to get them to like admit like, oh, I knew about the cruises, but you didn't, to like keep herself clean. But I don't know.
Right.
I don't know if that's necessarily like Succession style to be like, oh, big reveal 2 episodes later, like they were wearing a wire. But I don't know. That's gotta be, Tom can't be that desperate based on what we've seen from him and shit. Like he, with the whole last season, like I wonder if the happy or the unhappy that I am with you is worse than the unhappy I would be without you. Like I don't think him and Shiv are like end game. They're not like long term here, and he knows that.
Oh,
and like,
no.
So I don't think he would voluntarily go to prison for someone who he knows does not love him or care about him. So I feel like there's some ulterior motive there.
Well, okay, so I hadn't seen or heard any of that speculation about the wire situation, but it makes sense in retrospect, of course. The thing that came to my mind, at least during the Shiv conversation, it kind of changed my perspective when he went in to actually talk to Logan. But the way he was talking about it, it was almost like he was lying to see what she would say. And then that was whatever, based on what she said, that was how he was going to move forward. So if she was just like, oh, well, yeah, you should go to prison. Like you should take the fall for us. Then he'd be like, oh, wow, you are just so fucked. Like you don't give a fuck about me, like whatsoever. I'm going to screw you over. I'm going to screw your family over. But it seemed like, I don't know, I guess maybe he was sincere, and like that is what his lawyer friend said, and then of course he went and talked to Logan after, and he seemed like that was for real. So maybe the wire thing is possible. There's something there. There's definitely something there.
Well, I'm sure that we will just continue. Like I was trying to find a good meme to do last night, but I never ended up pulling the trigger. But basically just like an exponential graph, like going off the charts right now. That's the way that the first 3 episodes have gone, and it's just getting better and better. And I am super excited for the next couple episodes here. And then also quick piece of, as we transition into news, we got news this past week, not that it was necessarily a surprise for anybody, that Succession was officially renewed for season 4. So we've got plenty of Roy family drama still to come.
Yeah, but everyone saw it coming. So glad, but it's good to see. Yeah, they're fully, full steam ahead.
Right. Well, what else is full steam ahead, Johnny? I think there's one thing that I'd like for you to have the honor to reveal.
Yeah,
it's not really a reveal at this point, but
yeah, if we're talking green lights and good positive energy moving forward, the announcement of the year potentially for movies as far as future projects goes is that Dune Part 2 is officially happening on Tuesday, after opening weekend, they announced on Legendary's social media, they went ahead and posted, this is only the beginning, as we heard at the end of part 1. And they confirmed, they said thank you to all the fans and everyone who's supporting it. And that they are in fact moving ahead with part 2. And it was very much coordinated. A lot of the primary cast members and crew members posted about it. Hans Zimmer, Timothée Chalamet, Zendaya, Rebecca Ferguson, Josh Brolin, Greg Fraser. It was very much a celebratory mood. And then we also got, at the same time, we got information from the trades. They were reporting, they had a quote from Villeneuve talking about how excited he was and how he was thanking everyone for the opportunity. And also we got confirmation Hans Zimmer, of course, will be back. Greg Fraser will be back. And we got a release date of October 20th, 2023, less than 2 years from now. I was fully braced for a 2024 release date. I was fully expecting 3 years of waiting. So this is, that's music to my ears. If they can make that happen, that would be awesome. But, if it delays happen also, I'm totally prepared for that as well, because that's just the nature of it. But we also know that they have a lot done. And Villeneuve himself has said that they do have a lot done. They've been working on the script, this whole time. The movie got delayed almost a year, part 1 did. So that gave them extra time when they were finished with the movie, all of everything on part 1 to do concept art and to work, think about casting, to work on designs and locations and everything. So, and also they have the benefit of, they've done this before. They've made a Dune movie before. They did part 1, probably, in the same place they're going to be filming and making part 2. So it's super exciting. It was like, the timeline was just bursting with excitement and enthusiasm and joy. It was like New Year's Eve or something, except like there's actual reason to be excited. Like a tangible thing to look at and think about and speculate about. A lot of people jumped immediately into talking about casting. I certainly did, and tweeted some ideas that I had for Fade, Ralph Harkonnen and the Emperor, Shaddam, and Princess Irulan. So yeah, it's a lot of excitement. And we know, if they're going to be making that, that release date, they're of course going to be filming next year, probably late summer, early fall. Give themselves just about a year, of course, to get post-production done and everything. So we'll get more and more information in the next months and in the next year, leading up to that, and that includes casting and everything. So it's like a whole new world. It's a lot of excitement, a lot of possibilities. People thinking about, how's part 1 or how's part 2 gonna start? How's part 2 gonna end? What's the action gonna be like? The worms and everything. So the Fremen culture, the Sieges, it's a lot of excitement. I'm just like, knowing the first time we heard about Dune and it was going to be made, it was like 4 or 5 years of waiting, and this is just 2 years, and it's like we at least have the first movie now to kind of base our thoughts on and everything. So yeah, this is great. I couldn't be happier. Of course, I have to brag. I have to like boast a little bit.
I told you so.
I told you so. Everyone and their mother was doubting this movie in every department. It was like, maybe Villeneuve is finally going to miss. Maybe it's going to be a bad movie. Maybe it's going to be a mediocre movie that isn't going to resonate with critics as much or with his fans as much. That's obviously not been the case. It's been doing, it's had very, very strong positive reactions across the board. Fans, general audience, critics. They were saying it wasn't going to make money, not nearly enough money to, justify a part 2. And of course, it's been doing really well internationally and now domestically, and it's overperforming in a lot of instances and clearly doing well enough to merit a part 2. And now, finally we do get that, and people were laughing. And of course, someone who will not be named had to get wrung out on the timeline for being a box office expert and constantly, having a seemingly joyous feeling that this movie was not going to be successful leading up to this. So that is all settled. That's all put to bed. There's not any more speculation or doubting or negative boasting about, this isn't going to happen because X, Y, and Z. No, it's happening, and fans can now rest. They can now They don't need to campaign for this movie to happen. We don't need to go, full
Release
on.
release the Denny cut.
Yeah, so it's all rainbows and butterflies for the time being, and it's just fingers crossed that the production now goes well, goes smoothly.
Well, I know we talked about it in last week's episode about like our view of the positives of part two and everything about like it'll give people more time to see part one, and it'll give them time to read the book and explore the world and like get ready anyway. But I've seen that firsthand over the last week. One of my friends who was very excited about Dune but hadn't read the book or knew, and he just like got secondhand excited basically from seeing like us talk about it on the timeline on the podcast, and then like bought into the hype and kept up with it on his own. And then he saw the movie and really liked it, but was still sort of like but I need to know what happens in part two. Like what's basically like a lot of the people have reacted. Like he really enjoyed it, but wanted more. So he sent me a picture this week that he had picked up the book and got that. So he'll be diving in. And then I don't know if you'll be able to hear it, but this right here, I don't know if it's picking up on the mic. That's me flipping through the pages of Dune Messiah, a birthday present from my lovely fiance. So I will be hopefully, I think my plan is to go ahead and reread the first book. Because like we said last time, I read that in like early 2020. It was like at the very start of the pandemic, basically. I was already reading it when the pandemic started, but so I'd love to, instead of just jump from Dune movie part one, skip part two, and then start the third, the what would be the third movie if everything goes to plan. I want to catch back up, but like I said, a lot of people being able to use this time between now and October 2023 to either rewatch the movie, invest in the world, read the book, read the sequel, but just continue to be hype about it. And I saw a cool, I think I assume you posted it, or at least shared it on Twitter, that Frank Herbert's birthday is like October, his wife's birthday is October, and that the birthday of the film was October, and that if this doesn't get delayed, that this would continue in that October Herbert family tradition. So that would be a cool little nugget there.
Yeah, that is neat. Yeah, it's nice how they've kind of picked out. I was shocked that they had a date totally picked out and settled and everything that quickly, but that's good news. It's confidence, and October has been a good spot. For movies in the past like this, or just big kind of maybe more adult blockbuster. I mean, Joker, we know, was a big hit for Warner Brothers that came out in October, and The Martian was another one a few years ago that did well. So this is a good little spot here.
Well, turning our attention from one space epic to two other space epics that we got trailers for this past week. One just coming today. First look at, I want to call it a teaser, but it was dubbed a full trailer for the Book of Boba Fett, the Star Wars Mandalorian spinoff that is coming to Disney Plus December 29th. We got a first look at that. Obviously, season 2 of The Mandalorian ended with Boba and Fennec taking over for the Jabba the Hutt crime syndicate on Tatooine, and now we get a look at what's to come. And it seems like Boba is trying to win over all of the other underworld crime bosses, and not necessarily build an alliance, but just have sort of like peace, which is kind of like not what I was expecting. But I really enjoyed the look and feel of this. It seemed very super cinematic, which like we've seen that with the Mandalorian as well, but it didn't seem like it was a TV show. And it also had a bit more of a overarching storyline rather than being the serial style. Like season 2 of Mandalorian got a little bit, I don't want to say better, but a little bit more like traditional, with an overarching story, but it was still sort of like self-contained episodes. But this seems to be more of like Boba's story from like episode 1 to episode whatever, instead of like little side missions here and there. So I'm excited about that. What were your thoughts on, as someone who is a Mandalorian fan but not necessarily a huge Star Wars fan?
Oh man, I don't know. I don't know what this is that I'm feeling. I do like The Mandalorian a lot. I love The Mandalorian. And essentially binged those first couple seasons. Um, but I don't know what it is about this. I mean, to be clear, I do not have the nostalgia for the original films because I've never really sat down and just watched them beginning to end in their entirety. And of course, I didn't grow up with them. I didn't watch them as a kid. And I'm certainly not old enough to have seen them when they originally released. So I never had that, oh, Boba Fett, like the mysterious like aura around him and how he's so badass and has like the coolest costume and has a jetpack. And so really I know of him. I know what he did in those movies. I know all that stuff.
Which was not much in the movies.
Not much.
When Jake and I did our Star Wars like deep dive a couple of years ago, like the Boba Fett aura is from toys basically, and from standing there and looking cool, because he's like in 2 seconds of Empire Strikes Back, and then he is in like one scene in Return of the Jedi, and he goes out extremely sad and gets eaten by the Sarlacc pit, which is when we thought he died, and then obviously he came back in Mando. But most of it was from like he was this mysterious character who like first came in and like concept art and toys, and so like kids were able to like make their own adventures with him, not having seen him in the film yet or knowing like who he is or what he does. And so that's why like he became such a fan favorite, which is crazy. So like it is a lot of that like origin, like if even for me, like as a kid watching like religiously, like watching the Star Wars movies, it wasn't the same as like someone who kind of was there firsthand during that time, I would imagine.
Yeah, exactly. So that, yeah, see, that's just another perspective. But so for me, my real experience that I have seen is Mandalorian season 2. And he's very cool. I mean, he's badass. He does his thing. And when the show ended, season 2 ended, I was looking forward to, this thing that they set up. They basically set him up with the spinoff, and we knew it was coming. And now it's here. And I just feel, I don't know if it's like Star Wars like disinterest or burnout, because I've never been that interested in Star Wars to begin with, but Mandalorian has kind of overcome that. Maybe this is just feeling like it's not like my thing, or it's just the vibe is just not like pulling me in like the Mandalorian was. And of course it's just a trailer, so it's hard to really judge what the whole show is going to be like. I'm sure I'll still give it a shot and check it out, but yeah, I would say I'm not as bullish on this as I maybe had been previously, or just as I am for maybe more Mandalorian and that even Mandalorian. That's another thing where I'm very curious. Like, I mean, Grogu is gone now, like he's out of the picture. So what is that going to show? What's that show going to look like? What's that show going to feel like? That is a big question mark. And of course, there are many other Star Wars shows in the pipeline. Maybe too many. I don't know. Obi-Wan is the one that's exciting because, of course, Ewan McGregor's back. Hayden Christensen is back. Ahsoka, of course, now that we know Hayden Christensen is going to be in that show, that's another one that has people interested. These other ones, like the one with Diego Luna, his character, Andor from Rogue One, a movie that I didn't really like or care for. Like, I'm just like whatever about that, and a few of the other ones,
Rangers of the New Republic, or
yeah. So we're gonna see how this all goes, but fingers crossed. I don't want it to be disappointing, of course.
Yeah, I mean, I when we now know that like this is separate from Mandalorian season 3, but people kind of didn't when that post-credit scene like first happened, like people were like, oh, is that what like is Mandalorian season 1 and season 2 the book of Din Djarin, and then this is the book of Boba Fett for season 3, and then we're going to kind of like serialize the whole show and have like different Mandalorians, different bounty hunters be at the center. But that's not the case, so I am curious what season 3 will look like there. There was I believe this was confirmed that the voice of the what seems to be the villain in the trailer for Book of Boba Fett was Pedro Pascal's voice. He's voicing I don't know what the species is called, but it's like the dude who's sitting on the throne and has like the long neck and the kind of big eyes. But so that's just he's double dipping here in the Star Wars universe.
Well, that greedy bastard.
Well, speaking of other extraterrestrials, we also got a trailer for Lightyear this week. The Buzz Lightyear Toy Story spin-off prequel. I don't know how we're referring to this. Inspiration. This is not a Buzz Lightyear toy movie. This is the event that the toy of Buzz Lightyear was based off of. So we've got a real life space ranger, Buzz Lightyear, going into space for a mission, voiced by Chris Evans. What were your thoughts here?
Certainly not what I was expecting tonally. Many people have already pointed out that this feels like more like a biopic trailer than a kid cartoon trailer. Which that's not to say, we're putting Pixar movies or kids movies in a box by any means, but I think it's an inspired choice. It's interesting. I'm looking forward to seeing more. When they said that they were doing their first kind of true blue sci-fi movie, that certainly caught my interest because that's my favorite genre. Now it's Toy Story related, of course, but it's not in the world of Toy Story. It's like a different kind of fictionalized world. So there's a lot of opportunity. The animation goes without saying looks gorgeous. They keep getting better and better. And I'm curious to see where the story goes. I'm curious to see more of the world. They didn't really have Chris Evans talk too much, which is fine. I mean, I know what he sounds like. I'm fine with that casting. I'm looking forward to it. I think it should be pretty cool. I'm just not like, I don't know. Pixar, as we know, they can be a little bit more hit or miss these days. But we'll see. We'll see. I don't know. What do you think about it?
Yeah, I also was kind of not taken aback, but like I'm excited with what we saw. I don't think either of us really knew like what to think of it. When we first got the news, when we were told, like the Chris Evans tweet, just to be clear, this isn't Buzz Lightyear the toy. This is the origin story of the human Buzz Lightyear that the toy is based on. Like, so I'm still sort of confused as to is this a movie that the toy is based on, or is Buzz Lightyear like a real life person that is doing a real space mission that then inspired like a toy? Do you have any clarity there?
No, from my understanding of what they said last year when they announced it, that this was like the fictional movie that Andy would have seen as a kid, like a Star Wars type, and then he would have loved it, and then he would have wanted to buy the toy and get the toy, and that's what
Gotcha.
That's what it is, yeah. Because also remember, Zurg is a thing in the game, like in the video game they play and the toys. So I would presume Zurg is the enemy and the antagonist of this. They didn't show him; they kind of alluded to him.
Someone pointed out that like in the teaser poster that they gave, that like in the reflection of his helmet, you can see like the color scheme of Zurg, okay. And so there may be like an Easter egg there. But
I certainly think Zurg is going to be in this. I think it'd be crazy not to have him in it. I mean, if you're going to mine nostalgia, why stop
might as
here?
Well, yeah.
Why stop here?
But I did really like the look of this. I think it looks, again, like Pixar. There's no point talking about it at this point because it's always super impressive. But like, this seemed like the sci-fi images were there. I know people were this happened like right around the Dune release as well. So people were posting like screen grabs from this and saying like Dune 2021. But I'm into it. I'm excited for it. And that's coming next summer, June 17th. Sorry. So any final thoughts on Lightyear?
To infinity and beyond.
To June 17th and not beyond. So a couple quick casting pieces to get through. We talked about it a couple weeks ago. Ana de Armas crushed it in No Time to Die. We wanted to see more of her. Barbara Broccoli said, no, we're not doing a spinoff. Well, you know who is? John Wick. She's going to star in a John Wick spinoff film where she would play a young assassin out to avenge the deaths of her family. Like, what more could you want after seeing that 7 minutes of screen time and No Time to Die?
Yeah. Yeah, I
I know
tweeted that.
you're kind of mixed on John Wick in general, but just like
Yeah.
the concept of this sounds.
I mean, like, just listen to that log line. I mean, that's like the most basic, like a young assassin is out to avenge the death of her family. Like, okay.
I will say as someone who has enjoyed all three John Wick movies, like they've each like gone deeper and deeper into the world of like the Continental and the
Yeah.
the lore within like the training and everything. And I think it was in chapter 3 in Parabellum where we see like John go back to like the ballerina, like the
Yes.
school basically. So it's like assuming she's like one of those in that position. So I think it could do a good job of like further exploring and it's not like this is just like some random like like young assassin that's trying to do it, but like that they've kind of laid the groundwork slowly for that. And I assume it's not like it's not like they saw No Time to Die and were like yes, but the project was in the works and then they saw No Time to Die and they were like yes, Ana de Armas. Like that.
Yeah.
That's how.
That's fair. I think one of my issues with the John Wick movies at this point though is that they do continue to like expand the world and like bring in new elements. But to me, especially with Parabellum, they continue to introduce things, but they feel like they don't really go anywhere, or like they're just so like surface level. Like there's no, like it doesn't feel real. Like it just feels like another like just a quick scene looking at one other cool thing that someone thought of. Like it doesn't, like the Halle Berry situation. Like that was, it was cool. I mean, it's Halle Berry and it's these dogs in the desert and the dogs are helping kill these people with John Wick and Halle Berry. But it just doesn't, like the ballerina scene, like I barely remember that. Like it was, he goes to ask for help and like it alludes to like a thing or two about his past and what they do there. And now I guess we're going to have Ana de Armas's character as a part of that group that we saw for like 5 minutes, which is fine. Again, she is clearly cool as a badass in No Time to Die, and she was, lobbying to play Catwoman in the Batman, which I think would have been great. I'm very excited for Zoe Kravitz, but if we couldn't have had her, I think Ana de Armas would have been a fine replacement, and I could have seen that. And so I would imagine this is kind of like going to be very much in that same vein of, shoot 'em up, jumping around, doing hand-to-hand combat, mixed martial arts. It'll be a fun little detour from the typical John Wick stuff. Hopefully, I mean, we've seen Atomic Blonde, we've seen Nobody, we've seen some of these other inspired sort of things. Protege, I think, was that one that came out recently that no one saw or cared about. Wasn't directly inspired by those, but then there's also like, the assassin avenging her family, that also reminds me of Birds of Prey to an extent. It kind of reminds me of Huntress. So there's like it's just, it has to be done well, of course, and I'm just not sure based on how I've felt, especially about the last John Wick movie.
I mean, that also is like the premise of John Wick, that he's avenging his wife's death, or his dog. Well, yeah, his wife died separately, but so avenging family.
Unrelated.
Dog is family. Dog's family.
So yeah, we'll see. This seems like it's probably a couple years away at least. So
yeah, for sure. So another thing that's still a bit away, we have no information about this other than the fact that it is a thing. Bill Murray has joined the cast of Ant-Man and the Wasp: Quantumania. We don't know who he's playing. We don't know how big or insignificant the role may be, but another legendary face joining the MCU. Any instant reactions there?
not really.
I like Bill Murray.
I have no attachment to like Bill Murray or any feelings about him necessarily. I mean, he's a fine actor, obviously like a legend. A lot of attachment for like Ghostbusters and Caddyshack and Zombieland nowadays. Plenty of other classic movies. I also get the feeling based on the little tiny bit of reporting or what he said about it. He probably isn't in the movie very much. It's probably more like a bit role or a cameo sort of
I mean,
thing.
that's kind of what Ant-Man has been known for too. With like, I mean, Michael Pena was a bigger role as Luis, but then like Dave Dastmalchian, Ti was in the first one. I don't remember if he was in the second one, but like,
Yeah.
they kind of had a supporting cast of comedians there.
Yeah. So, and they're in the quantum realm, presumably. So maybe he appears in like a different universe or something like that. Hey, maybe he's a variant of someone. I mean, who knows? But that's, I mean, it could be cool. I'm sure it'll be fun. I'm sure it'll be funny. I also really don't care at all about the previous Ant-Man movies. So, I guess him joining this particular movie doesn't add that much excitement for
Put
me.
some
But
respect on the
could be another, could be just a little extra thing that gets me a little bit more excited, likes it a little bit more.
Well, one thing that I would wager you're more excited about this, the Batgirl movie coming on to HBO Max. Brendan Fraser will now star across from Leslie Grace as the supervillain Firefly. He's an expert in pyrotechnics and explosives, wears a heat-insulated and fire-retardant battle suit, and has a jetpack and numerous incendiary weapons. Brendan Fraser's so back. My guy's having the Brendan Renaissance.
Yeah, he is killing it. And I love that for him. I'm excited to see him in these roles. He's got his movie with Aronofsky coming up next year, and then of course he's in Killers of the Flower Moon with Scorsese as well. And this is his kind of I don't know, has he been in any other like or cast or filmed any other blockbuster type movies recently? I want to say this might be like his first.
I mean, I wouldn't consider No Sudden Move a blockbuster, but that had like big names in it.
Yeah, so he's making moves, and that's very cool to see. This will be fun. I think I can see him definitely like chewing up this role, similar to like Ewan McGregor in Birds of Prey. This seems like something that'll be fun to see him explore. And Firefly, lesser known villain, but not underrated necessarily. But I'm excited to see that character in live action and done well with like a bigger
Wasn't
budget.
Firefly on Gotham, the TV show?
I believe so. Yeah. And who wasn't on that show? Am I right? But yeah, so that's fun, and it makes me again a little bit more excited for this movie, a little bit more excited for this project. Not one of my most anticipated by any means, but I am of course a DC fan. I like Batgirl. I think Leslie Grace is a cool choice for the role. I liked her in the Heights, and yeah, I dig it.
All right, well, let's get into the main event. We're talking Last Night in Soho. All right, Edgar Wright back again after Baby Driver. He's venturing into what was, I believe, dubbed like a full-on horror film, but I don't think it really felt that way. But Last Night in Soho, we've got Anya Taylor-Joy and Thomasin McKenzie as some alter egos here. Sandy and, what was her name? How am I forgetting that? Thomasin McKenzie was Eloise.
Thomasin McKenzie's character, Eloise.
Yes. Anya Taylor-Joy playing Sandy from the 1960s. Thomasin McKenzie, present day, as Eloise. We've got Matt Smith, Terrence Stamp, and the late, great Diana Rigg as well. Pour one out for Olenna Tyrell, which I didn't even, until like the very last scene, I was like, oh, wait, that's who that was. Because like, it was like, I don't know, I could tell that I knew her, but I didn't place it until the very end. But currently sitting at a 74% critic score on Rotten Tomatoes and 92% audience score. Myself, I came in at a 78 out of 100. Johnny, what do you have here? I know you didn't like it as much as me.
Yeah, I hate to say it because I grew up a big Edgar Wright fan. All right. And he's been one of my favorites, kind of like a formative filmmaker for me. And I think this is by far his worst movie, or at least, discounting his very first feature film, which was like a micro budget movie. But yeah, I was very disappointed with this. I don't know what I would rate it, probably like a 50 something, or right around 50, 40, upper 40s maybe. There's certainly technical, impressive wizardry going on here, but from a story standpoint, from a character standpoint, the writing, I just thought it was very, very weak. And that is surprising considering maybe this was a detriment in some regard, but he co-wrote this. He did not write this completely by himself, which had been, kind of his, as an auteur, as a guy who would write and direct his own films. That was his go-to thing. And then on this, he collaborated with Christy Wilson Carnes, who is probably best known for helping co-write 1917 with Sam Mendes. And then she is also, I believe, working on the Taika Waititi Star Wars film, helping write that. So, I was so disappointed. And fortunately, I will say, this has been one of my more anticipated films of the last couple of years, just because I loved Baby Driver. I know that one was also a little bit divisive to an extent, but I think most people really liked it. And technically an amazing movie with the sound and the music and the choreography and everything.
Definitely.
This one, so there was reason to be excited. There was reason to look forward to him checking out, the horror genre, seeing it through his eyes. I thought was just such an exciting prospect. But it got very divisive feelings out of Venice, where it premiered. And since then, it has continued to be divisive. It went to TIFF, I believe, and has been out. Some more critics have seen it since then. So I was bracing myself to be disappointed, and I was kind of shocked by how it was being received. But now I totally understand the complaints and the criticisms. So we'll be getting into that.
Well, I enjoyed it quite a bit. This was my how I spent my birthday evening. We went to a nice Italian dinner. Went to the Alamo Draft House for the first time because for some reason there was only one showtime at AMC and at Regal around us. So we had to go to the Draft House, which was a good time. It was a nice theater. But I liked this quite a bit. It was fun. There are certainly things there are issues with it. The plot, like I really liked the first two acts, and the third act, it kind of tried to do too much. Got a little overwhelming and lost some of its steam. But I thought that Thomasin McKenzie and Anya Taylor-Joy are both like absolutely magnetic on screen. They're super fun. And I like the way that they had like the duality back and forth versus, just having like one leading lady. And so that was a lot of fun. Like you said, the Edgar Wright, the flair, the style of everything is a lot of fun. The soundtrack, the look and feel of it, from the costumes to the like set design, the production design of everything. So I was able to sit back and enjoy this. I didn't think that I was a little disappointed as far as, like I said off the top, like it was advertised as being like a horror movie. Like, oh man, Edgar Wright's going to do like a full horror movie. Like, I feel like it's more of a thriller, like a psychological thriller, if you want to use that term, rather than, an all-out like horror movie. Like there weren't really any times where I was like scared, I would say. And I mean, like they try and do some jump scares, like the ghosts
sure do.
Like reaching through the floor, but like
there's a running jump
that's
scare.
in the trailer. The running jump scare.
Yeah, well, running as in he continues to go back. Yeah, it goes back to this thing with cars and people standing in the street.
Oh yeah, I mean that was so obvious. Like when it happened, obviously we're getting talk about some spoilers here, but when Terrence Stamp's character gets smoked in the street, like it was so obvious that was going to happen. The way that they had like the shot set up and that he was just like standing there talking for an extended period of time in the middle of the road. Like there were a couple before that where she almost gets hit like crossing the street, but that was rough. He went splat.
Splat. Yeah, he ate shit on that one. So, should we talk the plot here? Should we kind of elaborate?
Sure thing. So we've got obviously if you've seen the trailer, it's kind of a split film. As the fun fact, not fun fact, but I know we had previously discussed last night in Soho, meaning final night in Soho or previous night in Soho. I can now confirm it means previous night in Soho. As a lot of this has to do with what Eloise is dreaming about. So Eloise, an aspiring fashion designer, is mysteriously able to enter the 1960s, where she encounters a dazzling wannabe singer, Sandy. But the glamour is not all it appears to be, and the dreams of the past start to crack and splinter into something far darker. So Eloise, that's Thomasin McKenzie's character, she is born and raised in a small, like she's raised by her grandmother, basically. Her mother committed suicide, and she's lived out in the countryside away from large crowds and people and basically like modern culture. She's like dying to get back into the 60s. When she finally does come to London, that's where she wishes she could live. She's got old school clothing, old school music. Just doesn't really fit in with any of her new peers at the Fashion Institute in London. But when she's there, she has like a horrible roommate, has to move out, and finds this old apartment where she kind of does her own thing. And she has a dream the first night she's there, and it transports her. It's a visceral dream, and she sees herself in the 1960s in London, but she's instead portrayed by Anya Taylor-Joy, who we learn is Sandy. She's a real person from the 60s, and basically every night she has these like wonderful dreams where she is living this life, and then things take a left turn and get pretty dark. Rather than being an idealistic view of the 60s, Sandy thinks that she's going to be a big singer, and then gets tied up with this guy Jack, played by Matt Smith, and it's not all glitz and glam. Instead, she kind of turns into being pimped out by Jack, and that obviously freaks out Eloise, and she basically tries to figure out a way not to have to go to sleep because she's so scared of everything and can't stop it from happening. But then a lot ensues as she's kind of trying to escape the last night in Soho.
You said it all.
That I did.
So, okay, let me get the positives out of the way, because most of what I have to say is negative. Okay, the lead performances are very good, no question. I don't think anyone would come out of this movie saying, I thought they were bad. I thought that Thomasin McKenzie was underwhelming, or Anya Taylor-Joy was weak. They were both excellent. Thomasin McKenzie is certainly the lead. I think she is the
Definitely
full-blown protagonist. Anya Taylor-Joy is definitely more of a supporting role, but they do have the most screen time in the movie. And Thomasin McKenzie, she is so damn good, and I'm so glad. I wish this was a better movie and a more successful movie, because it's already bombing. But I'm so glad to see her get a lead role that is, has some meat on it. I think the character sucks. I think the character is very flat and one-dimensional, but it offers enough of a challenge with regards to acting and kind of bringing forth emotion that it does give her that, at least, as kind of like a platform. Because honestly, she was in Old earlier this year, not like a big deal. I didn't think she was especially like good in that. I didn't think anyone was really good in that. But I thought, she was in Leave No Trace, which is a very underrated, overlooked, rather kind of movie from 2018, Deborah Granick's drama. Super good. And of course, she was playing like kind of a younger character in that. In this, she's like a college student. She's actually 21 in real life, so she lines up with that perfectly. And I just thought she was excellent. I can't wait to see her in more stuff. I hope she gets like some like greater projects down the line. Mm-hmm. I have talked about her potentially being someone in Dune. I think that she'd be really awesome in that as well. So I'm looking forward to that. Anya Taylor-Joy, everyone loves her. Everyone goes crazy for her at this point. I didn't think this was like by any means like her best or like most memorable role, or even one of them, but she gets to act and sing and dance, and the singing and dancing is something we haven't really seen from her before, at least to my knowledge. So seeing that side was cool. She certainly kind of has the triple threat thing going on, which is fun to see. Watching her, go into new areas. And as you mentioned, some of the production elements are very impressive. The cinematography, it goes without saying. I mean, his cinematography is usually good, but we have Chung Hoon Chung, who is an incredible cinematographer. He's Korean. He did The Handmaiden. He's worked out with Park Chan-wook a few times. So he also did Old Boy and Thirst and some others. He also did It from a few years ago, which probably is what got him this potentially. So I thought it looked very good most of the time from a cinematography standpoint. Costumes were pretty cool. Hair and makeup looks great. The smoky eye thing that Thomas and Mackenzie has got going on in the last last third of this movie just certainly like works and builds up that mood and that kind of grimy feel to it. But other than that, I just thought that this was so uninspired and messy and just so below like what I would expect from Edgar Wright. And I will say, I tweeted about this. I don't know if you saw it. We were talking earlier about, when you think about Edgar Wright, you think about snappy, witty dialogue and editing and the soundtrack working very closely with that and being very clever in the way he uses the music. You think about the humor that he injects into all of his movies, even something like Baby Driver, which wasn't like a comedy. It was more of like a action drama sort of movie. There's a good amount of humor in that, especially visual gags, sight gags. He loves using
Mike
those.
Myers masks, baby.
Mike Myers masks. The dialogue just has that fun, it's just very, very, it's Edgar Wright. He's an auteur. You go and see his movies. If you love his movies, you love him because you can tell right away it's him. And I really think if I went and sat down and watched this and had never heard of it, didn't know anything about it, I don't think there's any way in hell I would have been able to come out of that and be like, oh yeah, that was Edgar Wright. Edgar Wright definitely wrote that and directed that. I thought it was lacking basically all those things I mentioned. I didn't think that it had the editing can be impressive at times, especially the way it works back and forth between the two timelines. But in the basic kind of moment to moment, scene to scene stuff, it doesn't have that at all. Like it doesn't have that kind of kinetic energy that I was hoping to see. Again, when I heard he was doing a horror movie, I'm thinking, wow, Edgar Wright doing a horror movie, that could be really cool. And he said it was inspired by things like Repulsion and Don't Look Now, which is one of my favorite horror films from the 70s. He's Giallo films, these Italian more like psychological thriller horror films. That like had me drooling. That's why I was so excited for this. And the cast was only like the cherry on top. But no, so the editing wasn't there. The dialogue I thought was so like, first off, it doesn't have any of the energy, like I mentioned, it usually does. It doesn't have the wit to it. It feels so flat, and it feels like the actors are just like really doing their best to make it seem natural or like it makes sense. Especially, actors like because the two main characters that we've been talking about, Thomas and Mackenzie's character, Anya Taylor-Joy's character, those definitely, they have the most time to work with. So they have kind of maybe the best writing, if you want to call it that. But these other characters played by people like Michael Ajao or Matt Smith's character, Jack, Terrence Stamp's character, I just thought that it was so like cliche or so basic. Michael Ajao plays his character, John, who is like a fellow college student of Eloise. And he is just like, he's a nothing. Like he is a complete cipher.
I was talking with Rebecca about it afterwards, and I was like, this guy, why is he so committed to Eloise right now? Like
because the plot demands it.
I'm willing to accept that. That's very accurate.
And it's terrible. It's so tone deaf and so ugly because this guy, Michael Ajao, is a black actor, mind you, and this is in London, and he's the only black person in this movie. And it's set up where basically it's made to seem like he is like sexually assaulting Eloise's character, because she's having these reactions to the visions and she's not really connected with her current state and kind of she's having this feeling that she's being attacked basically, and it's at her apartment, and Diana Rigg's character doesn't want boys over, and so it sounds like she's being attacked, and Diana Rigg like comes up there and is like about to barge in. He's freaking out, he has no idea what to do, he's like scared shitless, and you feel like horrible for him. And so he cuts his feet on the glass, he breaks a mirror, he runs out. And then like afterward, Diana Rigg's character is like talking about how she would have like killed him if, she had, had the chance, or if there's something wrong had been actually happening. And it just like has like this gross, like messy feeling. Like there's the male, female, the issues of sexual harassment and sexual predation and misogyny. And then also with this character, because he is the only Black character in the movie, it introduces like the factor of race as well. And it just seems like it just felt so, oh God. I mean, of course, Edgar Wright's not American, so I don't know if this is something that like maybe would have been at the forefront of his mind. But like, it was like a very strange thing to include. I'm not really sure why they went with that. And then to top it off and make it worse, the very next time these two characters, Eloise and his character John, are in the same room, which is in class the next day, he basically acts like nothing happened. I mean, he is of course kind of weirded out.
Right.
He's upset and like wants to make sure she's okay, and like is like doing whatever it takes to make her feel good about the situation, when she basically could have gotten him killed, cut up his damn feet, had him running out into the streets in Soho in the middle of the night. It's like, and this guy has been nothing but nice to her. And it's so strange that I'm even talking about it like this, because the entire movie is framed like men, which I'm definitely not one of those guys. Like the people that say not all men, like unironically, I'm the guy saying no, all men. Like we can acknowledge men are shit. They do a lot of awful things. There's a lot of systematic issues. This guy is like the nicest, most normal guy you could imagine.
Exactly.
Why would you frame it in this way? I just don't see the benefit. Like that was a huge issue for me. And then we haven't even gotten to the major issue that's probably going to bother most of the people that watch this movie, which is the twist, the big plot twist, which I'll let you get into, and you can also respond or add to anything that I just kind of dug into.
Yeah, well, I mean, obviously everything that you just said is extremely valid, and I 100% agree with all of that. But what I was going to say is just like, when you're talking about him at the next day in class, like he doesn't say anything. He wants to check in on her. Like, why is he so blindly committed to her? I know you said it's because the plot requires it, which yes, we can acknowledge that. But like this guy just had this horrifying traumatic experience that you referenced. Like if that happens to me, I am staying 1,000,000% away from this girl for the, like, you're 2 weeks into school or whatever, you have hung out twice, like
know this chick.
you have no commitments to her whatsoever, and then on top of like that, you stop her from murdering someone in the library.
Oh
like
my God.
She's in like a fugue state, thinking that she's being attacked by the ghosts again, and she almost stabs Jocasta in the eye. You have like a number of other experiences where it's just like steer clear, red flags, like sirens are sounding, like no, I'm not coming to help you like whatsoever, it's done. So I don't understand why he would ever put himself in this situation again.
Right.
But
and it should be mentioned when he stops the attempted murder that Eloise does in the library, unwittingly, of course, on her part. Not only does he stop it, he runs after Jocasta and is like,
and he's like trying to explain like, oh, she didn't mean it. It's okay.
Like he's going to bat for this chick so hard. I'm like, why? Just why? Like it's like, it was so demeaning. And like, I felt so sick for this character. I don't know why they chose to do it. Like, and it really just like subjugates this guy to being like her lackey. And I do not understand. And the optics of it, of course, are horrible. And that, like, I feel like you cannot ignore that. And you can still like the movie and enjoy it and everything, but I feel like that was such a like a not necessarily a deal breaker, but it was so distracting. And again, we're about to talk about it. This part with him really lights up towards the end of the second act, going into the third act. And I was already like, okay, this is decent. Like, this is pretty entertaining, like done well. I'm kind of curious to see where this goes. This was a huge issue. And then again, the plot twist we're going to get to, I was just like, what the hell is going on?
Well, what Johnny's referencing is that we learn, so basically throughout the whole movie, the trailers even set this up, that you think that like Jack, the pimp from the 60s, you think that that Terrence Stamp's character is old Jack, like that this man who one night, the night when that instance goes down, Eloise sees like a vision of Sandy being murdered by Jack, and she thinks that like Jack is still out there. He has killed her. He's gotten away with it. He's still alive. And so like, on the one hand, I'm excited that that was not actually the case, that Terrence Stamp wasn't old Jack, because like that would have been so annoying if that showed it in the trailer and that was the whole thing all the way through. So it flips the script there. But what it flips it to is that Diana Rigg's character, the landlord of this apartment, is actually Sandy from the 60s, and she lived all the way through. She did not get killed by Jack. She killed Jack. And that was just the latest in a string of murders, that when he pimped her out and turned her into a prostitute, she would murder everyone who had come over, all of the men. So these ghosts that Eloise has been seeing throughout her time there that have been haunting her, they are the ghosts of the men trapped. She buried them in the walls, in the floorboards, like all in the house. And so these guys are trying to actually be freed from Eloise, rather than rather than them attacking her like Eloise thinks they are. So we learn that Sandy is alive. She's killed everyone. She's trying to kill Eloise once she reveals this to her as well. And there's another run-in as she poisons her, tries to stab her, chases her up the stairs, sets the apartment on fire. And Eloise is like, "You're not a bad person. I understand. Like, I'm sorry this happened to you." While she's killed like hundreds of, like, yes, the people she killed were bad and like gross men, but like also we can't just overlook the fact that she murdered like tens of people. I don't know how many, but quite a few. Yeah. So that was the big dramatic twist at the end.
To your point, you were just mentioning, so these ghosts are seemingly like harassing Eloise throughout the movie and like chasing after her. They pop up everywhere. They pop up in the apartment, at school, in the streets. And at the last minute, when she's in the apartment, it's burning down, all this is happening, the ghosts are like upon her, or whatever you want to call them, which the effects here are not great, let's be real. But apart from that, they're upon her. They're trying to talk to her. At first you think they're just like mob like madness, but then once they're actually speaking and you can hear what they're saying, it turns out that they've been trying to get her to like help them and like not avenge them necessarily, but like
free them from the house so they can move onward or something like that. Yeah,
because they're kind of like trapped in this situation, spiritually. And also there's been like no justice, I guess you could say, to a degree, because she's gotten away with it. And then like a second later, like literally right after this, because at that point I was like, well, what? Okay, I'm impressed or like surprised that they went that route with that kind of twist on the ghosts speaking.
Because they're still not good people. It's not like, oh, I want to free you, but like, no, like it's like if we're talking about Succession again, there's like bad things happening all around.
Yeah. But a second later, after this revelation, Eloise hears this and sees this and realizes it. She comes face to face with Sandy again, and it's Diana Rigg, but then she also sees Anya Taylor-Joy, and it's kind of like this back and forth thing. And she's like, I can't remember exactly what she says, but she basically like absolves her of killing them. And she's like, yeah, it's okay. Like she I don't know how else to describe it except for that. I'd have to remember exactly what you said. But it's like you were just a second ago saying that, oh well, these guys, look at their suffering. You like feel sympathy for them, empathize with them, whatever. You're finally there's this twist, this revelation that this is what's actually been going on with the ghosts. And now the next second later, you're saying you're having the main character, the character we're supposed to like, saying to Sandy, the serial killer, that it's like fine, or like telling her it's okay. Like I was so jarred by that. And like up to that point, I couldn't understand what the message was supposed to be or what they were really getting at. And that last twist back and forth between those two positions, I was like, what in the hell is going on? And I get, we've been talking about, as you mentioned, it's not maybe necessarily black and white or, what have you, but like, I don't know. It's just, it's not even clear necessarily, did these, she was a prostitute and was basically being, pimped out by Jack. So was she, but it's like, it's like the question of like the consensual nature of all this. Like, was this, was this assault technically over and over again that she was being exposed to? Because it was really, against her will necessarily, like she didn't want to be in this position. It just is a really like messy ass gross.
Also, I feel like a slippery slope to try and like figure out like what they're trying to say. Yeah, like, I feel exactly. Like from what they're saying, like, because it's like on the one hand, it's like, okay, well, like what you're saying, like, is it assault or like because like if anything, like Jack obviously as the one who is like putting her in this situation, like he is the one like abusing her and assaulting her by like forcing this upon her versus like the actual individual customers who are like, I'm not even gonna try and get into, I don't want to slip down that slope.
And also like we're also at a point now where like prostitution, sex work, all these different things, like it's looked at, it's moving toward like a much positive light. I mean, legalization, right. All these others, especially in Europe. Like, I don't know, and things like OnlyFans and all these other things. Like, what exactly are we saying? Like, I'm not saying, of course, every sex worker, every prostitute is happy doing what they're doing, or they're doing it in a healthy situation. Of course, there are people that are taking
right. That's why I was bringing back because like I was having those same thoughts, and that's like, Jack, because it is clear that Jack is the one putting her in this position, that it's not her doing it voluntarily.
Exactly. But then like, are we rooting for her to kill these people? Like, I just don't know what the hell I'm supposed to take away or what I'm supposed to feel during any of this. And so that ultimately, I was fine with the movie up until like the last 30, 45 minutes. Like it was probably like a 3.5 out of 5, like good, passable, like a decent, fun enough little horror psychological thriller movie. But it just went to complete like disaster, red alert zone. Between the stuff that was going on with the character of John and then this twist with Diana Rigg, Anya Taylor-Joy being a serial killer, trying to kill Eloise. That's another thing. What the hell? Like Sandy. I
guess she was just like, I revealed myself to you now, so just to tie up any loose ends, I have to kill you as well.
So it's not so. And then again, that's like, okay, so we could defend or we can understand her killing the people that are assaulting her, the people she's being, subjected to. But now she's going to kill an innocent teenage girl.
And as well, that she gets poisoned. She gets poisoned and is like having the hardest time in the world getting up those stairs when Sandy's chasing her. And then like there's no like she's fine after that. Like the poison wears off, I guess. Yeah. And she's like running around and fighting again and escapes and doesn't have to like get her stomach pumped or get some antidote or anything.
And John is also stabbed horrifically in the gut as soon as he comes in. I thought maybe he might be able to escape that or something, but no, he full on gets stabbed with a big ass knife. and I guess is fine, because the way this movie concludes, I thought they're loading Eloise into the ambulance. It's going to cut to black. That'll be it. It's just like a truly dark cautionary tale. And no, it comes back around. She's having her fashion show. Her designs are amazing. And it's like, okay, so the 60s were bad, or like, don't look at it in this with nostalgia or through these rose tinted glasses, because all this bad stuff happened. But then her 60s costumes or her designs are so great. Like, everyone loves them so much. And like, the girls that were mean to her are now complimenting her, looking at her like in a better light, or like what they said earlier now has like a positive meaning. And John is totally chill and happy and fine and with her, and her grandmother is there. And of course, there's this last shot where Sandy is in the mirror because she sees dead people. Eloise, I guess we didn't really talk about that too much.
With the
Her mom is like a factor for like the first 5 minutes of the movie and then completely disappears. Like, the main thing that we're supposed to take away is that her mom was mentally ill. And so now Eloise and her powers and the things she's seeing can be contributed or attributed to the fact that her mom had mental illness. So again, I don't know how to read that, or like what to take away from that whole thing. Like, it's a whole nother thing we could dig into. But ultimately, yeah, the ending is just, I don't know. I don't know if we're supposed to think that Sandy's now going to terrorize her from the great beyond, or like she's fine now and like now she's going, like, I don't know what the hell this is. I am so disappointed by this movie. I thought it was so messy. Obviously hopefully I'm not killing your vibe completely.
Well,
but like,
obviously, like, talking through it like this is like, I would probably drop it from a 3.5 to a 3. Like I said off the top, like, I knew that we were going to get into this discussion and that there were going to be plenty of problems with the third act. I led off by saying that I really like the first 2/3 of it, and then it kind of goes off the rails. But I will, before we ramble on for too long, one final, I don't even know. I have to bring it up.
Okay.
At the very start, when she moves into when Eloise moves into Sandy's apartment, yes. She has that line about it's next to a bistro and that the garlic is the only thing you'll ever smell. Yeah. So is that just like a happy coincidence, or is Sandy pumping out like garlic smell? Because like, there are tins of bodies in the floorboards.
Oh yeah.
Like, nobody's ever smelled these rotting bodies. So like, is she pumping out garlic, or is she like paying the restaurant to like cook very pungent food? Like, I feel like that, like, is that just like a happy coincidence that like the restaurant was next door where she happened to start killing people, and that the garlic smell conveniently covers the rotting bodies from 60 years ago? Like, I mean, once it gets to a certain extent, you won't smell them anymore. But
right.
Like, for a time, like, somebody had to. Also,
physically, and I know this is like the minutia and like, suspension of disbelief and all that, but like, how the hell did this girl, like young woman, how did she manage to do this and hide all the evidence?
She's actually a carpenter.
Physically take apart the house and the apartment and put it back together. And why? Also, now that I'm thinking about this, and mind you, I suspected that she was Sandy. This was not like a huge surprise to me when it did finally come up. But why did she buy this place? What would the purpose have been? How did she buy it? Like, why would you go back and buy the house that has all of the evidence that you are a serial killer? Like, why? Like, I don't understand. You could be away, and maybe, and she says herself, many people have lived here. It could be anyone, but like, there's so many holes here, and I just thought, God, I'm good. I think we need to finish talking about this.
Well, thank you all for listening. No, I mean, I thought it was fun. First 2/3, solid. Goes off the rails at the end. Some problematic stuff. I'd bump it down from 3.5 to 3 after further talking about this with you.
Okay, fair.
But I mean, I would still recommend seeing it.
There's stuff to enjoy.
I would push seeing it just because, like you said, it's getting decimated. We like Edgar Wright still, even if you don't love this movie. Like we want fun and new and bold, like not franchise movies being made. So I would still recommend seeking this out, and you can leave with 30 minutes left if you want, but no, I still enjoyed it despite everything we've said.
Totally spot on.
Well, there you have it. Another episode in the books. Thank you all for listening. We really appreciate it week in and week out.
100%. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode. Come on back. Also follow us on social media. Check us out on Twitter. We got giveaways going on over there very often that you can take part in. We also have Instagram. Like us on Facebook. Subscribe on YouTube, where we post all of the episodes. And you can find those accounts at Inside Film Room.
And while you're at it, be sure to subscribe, rate, and review wherever you get your podcasts: Apple, Stitcher, Spotify, Google, Amazon, iHeartRadio, anywhere you can find a podcast. We are there. And come back next week for the MCU on the big screen. We're talking Eternals. We'll see you then.